The rushing waters of the Kashmiri mountain river roared with ancient fury as Dr. James Chen made his way along the treacherous rocky path. He had come to this remote region to study glacial formations, but what he found floating face down in the icy current would change everything he thought he knew about the universe. The figure was small, no larger than a human child, but its skin held an otherworldly luminescence that seemed to pulse weakly against the gray stones. 4 arms hung limply in the water, and what appeared to be gills fluttered desperately along an elongated neck. Without hesitation, James plunged into the freezing torrent. The current nearly swept him away as he fought to reach the dying creature. His boots slipped on moss-covered rocks, and his breath came in sharp gasps as the mountain air bit at his lungs. But something about the being's struggle reminded him of his own daughter back home. The same desperate will to live that he'd seen in her eyes during her battle with leukemia years ago. "Hold on," he whispered, though he doubted the alien could understand. "I've got you." James dragged the unconscious figure to shore, his medical training kicking in despite the impossibility of the situation. The being was female, he realized, with delicate features that spoke of intelligence and grace. Her breathing was shallow, and strange symbols glowed faintly beneath her translucent skin like a failing circuit board. He worked for hours, applying basic first aid while trying to understand her physiology. Her body temperature was dropping dangerously, and the luminescence in her skin continued to fade. In desperation, James wrapped her in his thermal blankets and carried her to his research station. For 3 days, he tended to her with the dedication of a father caring for his child. He learned that she needed both water and a specific mineral compound found in the mountain streams. Her gill-like organs required humidity, so he rigged a humidifier from his equipment. Slowly, impossibly, she began to recover. When she finally opened her eyes, large violet orbs that held the depth of galaxies, she spoke in a voice like wind chimes. Though James couldn't understand her language, her meaning was clear: gratitude, wonder, and something approaching reverence. Over the following days, they communicated through gestures and drawings. Her name was something like Zephyra, and she was lost, separated from her people during what appeared to be some kind of ceremonial journey. James learned that her species, the Ethans, lived in hidden settlements throughout Earth's most remote regions, guardians of ancient knowledge that predated human civilization. Using his GPS and her crude map drawn in the dirt, James determined that her home lay deep in the Karakoram Range, a journey that would take weeks on foot through some of the most dangerous terrain on Earth. Without question, he began preparations. The trek was brutal. James's human limitations became painfully apparent as they climbed through thin air and treacherous passes. His lungs burned, his muscles screamed, and frostbite threatened his extremities. But Zephyra, despite her small size, proved remarkably resilient. She seemed to draw energy from the mountain environment itself, and more than once, she helped him when his strength failed. On the 7th day, as they crested a seemingly impossible cliff face, James collapsed. His body had reached its limits. Altitude sickness, exhaustion, and exposure had pushed him beyond what any human should endure. As consciousness faded, he saw Zephyra kneeling beside him, her 4 hands pressed against his chest, that strange luminescence flowing from her skin into his. He awoke in a place that defied description. The Ethan settlement was carved into the living rock of the mountain itself, but it pulsed with organic light and impossible geometries. Crystalline structures grew like trees, and the air itself seemed alive with energy. Dozens of beings like Zephyra moved through the space with fluid grace, their bodies adapted to the high altitude and thin atmosphere. James was brought before the Council of Ancients, beings whose age could be measured in millennia. Through Zephyra's translation, he learned the truth that would reshape humanity's understanding of its place in the universe. The Ethans were not aliens. They were Earth's first intelligent species, older than human civilization by millions of years. They had watched humanity's rise with growing concern, seeing the same destructive patterns that had nearly destroyed their own people eons ago. Climate change, warfare, the poisoning of the planet's systems. Humanity was walking the path to extinction, but James's selfless act had shown them something they hadn't seen in centuries of observing humans, the capacity for true compassion toward the unknown. His willingness to risk everything for a being he'd never seen before, with no expectation of reward, proved that humanity possessed the one trait that could save both species. The Council made him an unprecedented offer. The Ethans possessed technology that could heal Earth's wounds, atmospheric processors that could reverse climate change, energy sources that produced no waste, medical knowledge that could cure diseases that plagued both species. But they would only share this knowledge with humanity if James became their ambassador, bridging two worlds that had existed in parallel for millennia. As James looked out over the impossible vista of the hidden city, he thought of his daughter, now grown and fighting to save endangered species in distant rainforests. He thought of the billions of humans below, unaware that their salvation might come from the most unlikely source. Zephyrah placed one of her 4 hands on his shoulder, her violet eyes reflecting starlight that seemed to come from within. In that moment, James Chen, a simple human scientist who had simply chosen to save a life, became the key to unlocking humanity's greatest alliance. The mountain winds carried his whispered acceptance across two worlds, and the future itself seemed to shimmer with new possibilities.